Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Bench Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. Want to welcome you here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. Wherever you may be watching or listening, we're happy to have you along with us. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to get into the volleyball rankings, the 4A conference for volleyball rankings, as well as we got some great guests lined up. We'll get an opportunity to sit down with quarterback and wide receiver coach at Mingus Union High School, Erick Quesada, to talk a little bit about the improvements we've seen from the Mingus Marauders so far this season, as well as the baseball season. He is the head coach for the varsity baseball team over at Mingus Union, and they had a shortened season last year, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll get an opportunity to sit down with Coconino High School girls volleyball head coach at the varsity level. That is Coach Serena Wallace, almost called her Serena Williams. Coach Serena Wallace talked about their weird brief pause in their season and what we can expect from them going forward. And then we'll talk to the head swim coach over at Mingus Union High School, Coach Gretchen, Wesbrock. We'll talk a little bit about their virtual swim meets that they've been holding and their swim meets coming up at the end of the week, which you can watch on Verde Valley TV. Like I mentioned, the 4A conference rankings for volleyball, our highest Grand Canyon region team right now remains the Flagstaff Eagles in these rankings. They sit at number 5 in the entire 4A conference. That encompasses every team in the 4A, whether they're in Phoenix or they're here up in Northern Arizona. Regardless, they're included in these standings. Flagstaff currently sitting at number 5. They are at number 1 in the the Grand Canyon region in the conference. They're currently sitting at number 5, playing some great volleyball right now. Behind them is the Bradshaw Mountain Bears. They sit at number 17 in the conference. They're playing some great volleyball right now. They're battling it out with Flagstaff, and we'll see what ends up happening with those two teams at the end of the year. Rounding out the rest of these teams, we've got Prescott sitting at 21. Right behind them is Coconino at 22. They're nipping at the heels at Prescott, and they're finally getting back out on the floor to play some volleyball. I know Coach Wallace is excited about that. And then we've got Lee Williams at 27, Mojave at 30, and Mingus at 38. A interesting volleyball season. We'll see how it all shakes out. As I mentioned, we've got a great show for you coming up. We'll get an opportunity to sit down with quarterback and wide receiver coach for the football team over at Mingus Union High School, as well as the head varsity baseball coach, Erick Quesada, on the other side of this break. Off the Bench will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Want to welcome you back here to Off the Bench, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt and the Cottonwood Parks and Recreation Center. I'm Philip Catafamo. Happy to have you back here. We are sitting down now with Mingus Union High School's quarterback and wide receiver coach, and also the head varsity baseball coach at Mingus Union High School, Coach Erick Quesada. Coach, welcome on.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Well, we're happy to have you, Coach. It's always great talking with you. Obviously, the Marauders saw a lot of changes on their team, on the field, off the field, some coaching changes with Coach Provenzano. You and a few of the guys from last year were able to stay on staff, which is great. What changes have you seen from this team from last year?
You know, it's really night and day, honestly. You know, it's enjoyable to go to practice and just see how the kids are responding to it, because, I mean, they got thrown into this mix and meeting the new head coach, you know, over the course of Zoom, you know, and all of a sudden he's asking you to come to practice and buy in, and then we get shut down again, and then, you know, we'll go into season, and, you know, it's just been a whirlwind, but the kids have responded really well to it. And I think that Doug's the right man for the job for it. I think that he's really helped the program out, you know, in the short period of how many months, whatever it is, tremendously. And I just see it moving forward really, really well for the remainder of this year and for many years to come.
And it very much has been a lot of changes. Obviously, you get a big upgrade in the weight room. I got an opportunity to check out the sort of Hall of Fame that is getting put together underneath the stands over at the Cave, and it's all starting to come together quite well. And hopefully, Coach Provenzano will stick around. But just kind of let's speak a little more about his impact on the program so far in his first year.
Oh yeah, I mean it's as you saw the weight room. If you haven't seen it, it's a state-of-the-art weight room. I mean it's way beyond its years for a high school. I mean, I played collegiate baseball and it was better than my weight rooms in college. I mean, it just speaks for itself. And I think that that's going to tremendously help the kids, grow as freshmen to seniors, or even from now until their end of their senior year. I think that it's really going to help them. Just what he's done in the Cave. I mean, with what the Harrisons have done, who was also assistant coach for us. I mean, that goes without being said that they've tremendously helped our program as well. But Doug's vision for what he wants his school to be and what he wants this program to be ultimately is really, really cool to see, just because he has bigger pictures in mind. He's not a short-term guy. He's very long-term goal oriented person. And it's really nice to see what he's done. And, like I've mentioned multiple times, in a short period of time, it's going to be really amazing to see when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned, the weight room looks fantastic. The Hall of Fame is getting put together. It seems like there's going to be some other upgrades possibly in the future for the Marauder program and at the high school, which is great. Coach Provenzano in his first year. Has anything rubbed off on you from him? Any kind of coaching tips or anything that you're going to translate to the baseball season?
It's really nice because we share the same philosophy. I know I speak for him is. When we have our kids, we want them to be better people at the end of the day. When it's all said and done, you have to hang up your cleats at the end of the day, whether it's in any sport, and you have to be a sustainable person in life. And I think that he carries that sentiment, and he's telling the kids, you know what, if you're going to wear Mingus across your chest, and you really have to, carry yourself the right way in the community and not have stuff rubbed back on you and your family and the school. But he's helped me, grow as a coach as well, having more patience and understanding, at the end of the day, these are kids, they're 14 to 18-year-old kids. And, him coming from, inner city school to here to rural Arizona, it's different for him. And he's had to adjust on the fly. And I know that I've had to, adjust on the fly as well, because how I thought I knew things when it came to football may not necessarily be right, and how he does it may not necessarily be right, but we have to meet in the middle to understand what's good and what's bad. And I think that he's done a great job of understanding, what he has here. And it's not, inner city Phoenix, it's rural Cottonwood, Arizona. He has what he has, and that's what he has to work with.
Yeah, I very much know that significant difference. I went to school in Phoenix, in the Phoenix area, Grand Canyon University, and then coming up here, it is a completely different environment. A much nicer environment, if you ask me. I very much like the open spaces and a lot of the nature as opposed to the hustle and bustle of the city. Like we mentioned, we've seen a lot of development from the players on the field. Obviously, Zach Harrison would be one of the big ones, in my opinion, of just seeing his growth from his sophomore year to his junior year. He looks so much more confident. His footwork is a lot sharper, which, of course, is a credit to you and of course, his father, Rob. But who else has really been kind of turning the table a little bit? We've seen some solid play from Hunter Perkins, from Angelo Alvarez. I'm loving the kicker, Marcus Bueno. Yeah. And I think the Marauders are playing the record may not show, but there's been so much improvement from this team from last year. And who's really been standing out?
For me, you named all those kids really, but for me, Zach Figge, senior leader, captain, the past 2 years, he's broke his collarbone. And then now here he is, almost leading the region in tackles. He had, I believe almost 17 tackles last game against River Valley. He's on one. But him just going out there and just, proving to everyone that, a collarbone's not going to stop me. I think if he did, God forbid something not happen again, you'd have to really pry him off the field, because that's how dedicated he is to wanting to turn everything around. Angelo Alvarez, he's just a gamer. He's just one of those, he's a bulldog. You tell him to run through a wall, he'll say, where at? That's just the kind of person he is. Drew Meyer, our bell cow. From last year ending with a concussion to come in, he has a lot to prove as well. Hunter Perkins, he's very small in stature. That's nothing against him. But he plays way above, his means, and he's done a phenomenal job coming in, adjusting to the boys, and they've really taken him in because he's from from Phoenix, and he's really stepped up. But the whole turnaround from last year to this year, it's a different mindset, it's a different feel. It feels different on the sidelines, and unfortunately with losses, there has to come growth. And and that's nothing against the team from last year or anything along those lines, but I just felt like it just became a normalcy to lose and not to feel anything. But this year, after the first loss against Flagstaff, you just felt something in that huddle, like this needs to change. It needs to change now, and that in itself is a win for the season right there.
Yeah, at the end of the Flagstaff game, we saw Coach Provenzano and the team huddled up, obviously the usual post-game huddle up after the game of Flagstaff. And of course, the season before, the Marauders had lost 45-2, but just kind of talking about that culture change, I got an opportunity. It was a couple days later, and John Stabe, our Steadicam guy, had said that he had caught some audio from Coach Provenzano, and his feedback after that game, a close loss against a very, very good school in Flagstaff, was just so positive, right. A complete 360. Again, nothing against Coach Ortiz or the staff last year, because the season played out how it did, and it is what it is. And Provenzano has now stepped in, but it just feels like you mentioned, that culture change. It just feels like a much more confident team, and close losses almost feel like victories in a lot of ways. Right.
Yeah. After that loss against Flagstaff, everyone was obviously, rightfully upset. A loss is a loss at the end of the day. That's just like competitive nature in everyone. But we suited up 24 kids, for that game. And they had a Division I running back that's probably going to go to NAU on a full ride scholarship. And he suffered a concussion in the first quarter. And that just goes to show, like, that game could have easily went way south quickly, but we held our ground and said, this needs to change. And, in a short course of a couple of weeks, we put out a very good product against a very good team. And 7-0, yeah, you only look at the loss, but look at how the loss happened. Look at how we battled. I mean, we easily could have potentially won that game with a minute and 20 seconds to go. But that's just it. His message to the team really opened up a lot of eyes. Like, okay, you know what, a loss is a loss, but where can we improve from here?
And very much with Luis Jaramillo, we're happy to see him back on the field, obviously suffering that scary concussion in week 1. He's been back. He came back the week after and ran all over the Bears.
Absolutely.
But more to the point, it just seems like up there in the northern parts of the state, you've got Luis Jaramillo with Flagstaff, and then you've got Zach Bennett with Coconino. I'm not sure what they're feeding those kids up there, but they've got some powerful runners. And speaking of those two teams who are currently sitting atop of the region, we're kind of seeing a little bit of a shift in the tide with the region this year. I know that both schools, Flagstaff and Coconino, and everybody else is going to lose seniors. But are we starting to feel maybe a changing of the tide in the region?
It's scary because not many people give Northern Arizona credit, and that's just statewide. Flagstaff and Coconino, when I was in high school, granted 10 years ago, that you started to see the change. You started to see them kind of coming up. But that, that's when Mingus was the huge powerhouse. But now, it's even. It's an even playing field. Prescott is down this year. I know. Speaking to Coach Collette at the region meeting last year, he just said that they lost everyone. I know Lee Williams, they were beating Bradshaw Mountain, single-handedly, decisively by halftime, and they made adjustments and they came back. I mean, it's just, this whole region itself is just, it's special. And it's because we don't need, I think I can speak for every coach, is we don't need that notoriety of, this and that. Why don't you come play us and see how it is. Coconino has a phenomenal coach. They're well coached. They have huge ogres, hogs, whatever you want to call them, linemen that I could even run through, a line for. Flagstaff, as you mentioned, they have Jaramillo, who's a phenomenal running back. And then you have Lee Williams, who's well coached by Pat O'Brien. You can go down the line. Mojave is a little bit down this year, but last year, they were really, really good too. So, you pick your poison, and then you have Bradshaw Mountain, with the guys who were here before us, who were so successful with. This is just a very fun region to watch, and I wouldn't be surprised if, when it's all said and done, if there truly is playoffs, hopefully there is, you see 2 or 3 teams in it.
Yeah, we're excited to see what the final stretch of the season has in store. Again, we were speaking with Mingus Union High School's quarterback and wide receiver coach for the football team, Coach Erick Quesada. He is also the head coach of the varsity baseball team at Mingus Union High School. And Coach, obviously, we will talk a lot more about the baseball season when we get to the spring season. But just, your season got cut short last year due to COVID-19. We only broadcasted one game before we had to shut everything down, basically. Do you feel – actually, let's just start with this. How did you feel when your season was cut short?
It's like you want to talk about heartbreak. It's heartbreak. I mean, you put so much effort into a season with boys that, you've grown to love over the course of years, and all of a sudden you have practice one day and then you don't see them the rest of the year. I mean, it was heartbreaking. We started baseball the Monday after we lost in football on a Friday. I mean, that was in November. And then we finished up in the beginning of March, I believe that's what it was. But it was just truly just heartbreaking to know those seniors who put in so much time and effort for the past 4 years literally have nothing to show for it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But fortunately, two of them went on to play collegiate baseball. Jace Taylor's at Yavapai, Peter Calandra's at a school in New Jersey. And then we have Trevor Hoke, who is at Grand Canyon University on a full academic scholarship. So, everything happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer in, but I really hope and pray that this year will be a lot different.
Yeah, and of course, we do wish Jace Taylor, Peter Calandra, and my fellow Lope, Trevor Hoke, a best of luck going forward with their collegiate careers in baseball or in academics. Coach, just a couple questions here. You guys have started fall ball. How's the turnout been so far?
It's been good. Most of my players who are at the varsity level are obviously football players. But there has been, I believe, on average, 10 to 14 kids for Tuesdays and Wednesdays every week. They're mostly majority freshmen, which is fantastic. I know that my assistant coaches have been running it for about 2 hours, like I said, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And having 14 freshmen, I mean, that's phenomenal. That itself is a freshman team. I know when I took over, we didn't have a freshman team, and for the past 4 years, we've had a freshman JV and varsity team, which is really huge to have close to 60 kids in our program. So it's really exciting to see.
The Mingus Union quarterback and wide receiver coach for the football team, as well as the head varsity coach at Mingus Union High School, as well as a teacher at the school, Coach Erick Quesada. Want to thank you very much for coming on the program, Coach, to talk, and I know we'll talk again later.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for having me.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more on the way right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by the head varsity girls volleyball coach at Coconino High School, Coach Serena Wallace. Coach, welcome on.
Hello, thank you.
Well, we're happy to have you. I know that you've been coaching the team now for 2 years. How'd you get started over at Coconino High School?
So I've been coaching club for about 5 years, and there was an opening. I had actually applied earlier on and didn't get it, so I was super excited there was another opening. So I went for it, and I got it, and it's been great being there.
How did that time as a club coach kind of build you as a coach in general?
Honestly, I didn't really think of coaching too much, and I got a degree in interior design, and was doing that. And then I had a friend ask me if I wanted to coach, and I love volleyball. So I was like, yeah, definitely. That sounds like fun. And then now I'm a director of a club and I coach at the high school. So it's kind of become my full-time thing. Didn't really expect that, but God works in mysterious ways. So.
Very much so. And, you mentioned your major in interior design. As you can tell, our set here is a little bland, so we might need some assistance on some decor. We can liven the setup a little bit more. A lot of browns and tans.
Good soundboard, though.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. I try to change it up a little bit with the shirts and add a little color. But, as I mentioned, you're now at the varsity level as the head coach over at Coconino High School. How has your time as the head coach, although it's currently short and hopefully will continue on, how has just that time coaching at a varsity level at high school been developing you as a coach?
So last year was a little bit tough just because you're coming in and there's seniors and juniors that don't know anything about you. They're trying to fill you out, see whether you care, that kind of thing. So last year was a lot of trying to build some trust with the girls, just kind of get an idea of what we want our culture to be and setting the tone for it. So last year was a lot of that and a little bit, of course you want to win. Like you play a game, we score the game so that we can win. But it was more about just building that culture and figuring out who we are as coaches. And then this year has been a little bit different. I lost my assistant coach just to life. She's still around and she still was around for a few things, but she's been gone. So it's just been a little bit of a different year. They're definitely not the same. And then we've got 2 new coaches at the lower level as well. But they've been good ads and it's been a lot of fun. The girls are awesome. And it's just been enjoyable. So.
And again, we were speaking with varsity girls volleyball coach at Coconino High School, Coach Serena, Wallace. And Coach, you got an opportunity to play against the Mingus Marauders, and I would be remiss not to mention, obviously, I'm the broadcaster for the Marauders, so I got to go to that game and call it. What I noticed on the sidelines and what I kind of see a tougher transition for younger coaches, which is striking that balance between the business side of the sport, but also at the same time keeping it fun. But on your side of the floor, I noticed that you're always in the game, very intense, very focused, but the girls are also smiling along and having a great time. How have you been able to find that balance between, being the serious coach, but also making sure that they're enjoying what they're doing?
There's definitely a balance. I mean, we all make silly mistakes. Like we've all been that person to do something dumb and be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And so some coaches come down hard in those moments, but I think it's just better just to like laugh it off and be like, what were you thinking? And then we can move on and get the next point, because if you start being negative about those types of mistakes, then it could spiral out of control really quickly. So there are certain things that they know better than to do, and I'll call them out for that. But then there are other moments that are just silly mistakes that we just get over. And then, of course, there are the amazing, wonderful kills and digs that just drive the passion behind the sport. So it's so fun to stand on the sideline and watch them. I would love to be on the court playing with them. So it's a little bit tough to keep the passion in a coaching perspective, but I just love watching them, and there's a lot of studs on the team, so it's fun to watch.
And we are going to kind of go into the roster here, and you do bring back a few returners from last year, one of them being Rakenna Curtis, your outside hitter. We got an opportunity to see her when she played against the Marauders, and she has got an absolute, I know in baseball you call it a cannon for an arm, but I'm not sure, maybe a hand for a rocket. I'm not entirely sure what the phrasing for that is, but she has got some speed on the ball when she gets a hold of one.
Yeah, she does. That was a little bit of a tough game to judge her on, but I'm hoping that she can step it up from that game, and she knows it too. But yeah, and especially when her and the setters are connecting, it's going down quick. So.
Yeah, very much so. It seems like she just needs a bigger floor, and she'd have about maybe 60 kills a game. Let's just be completely honest. Yes. She's very talented. Has she been getting any Division I scholars or any sort of scholarship offers that you know of yet? I know she's in her senior year.
Yes, she's planning on going to Yavapai College and playing there.
Fantastic. A future Rough Rider. Very nice.
Yeah.
Just to be staying local. That's great. Good for McKenna. How about any other players who have been developing quite well on the roster so far?
Yeah, I mean, Brooke Parker is obviously she was on varsity as a freshman, and she's still just as good as she was then, well, better.
Wow.
She is also planning on going to Yavapai College and playing there. So I'm not sure what we'll see with that, if they'll end up doing their 2 years and be done or if they'll move on. I could see them both playing further than that. Let's see. Who else do we have? We got Megan Hicks, too. She's also looking at college opportunities, so I'm sure she'll land something. And then after that, Elise Palmer, she's been an incredible libero for us. She's still working hard and getting better every day, but she's all over the court. And then we've got Hope Williamson. She's coming up. She's actually Brooke's cousin, which is just shows the athleticism of the family. But she's a sophomore, and last year was a little bit of a tough start for her. It was one of those, we're going to pull a freshman onto varsity, and we'll see how it goes. And she actually had a concussion early on, which kind of set her back last year. So this year she's been a starter, which is just a good recovery from her, and I'm excited to see what she has to offer. And then that's just a few. I mean, our whole roster is important. Each one of them brings something to the team. So I definitely don't want to come across as there's only a few. There's definitely all of them, and they all work hard, and we wouldn't be here without them. So.
Of course, it definitely looks like that everybody plays their roles quite well, and you've got a well-oiled machine in a team over at Coconino High School. What about the JV and freshman programs? How are they looking overall?
So we took a little bit of a hit this year with Corona.
Yes.
I think there's quite a few people that have decided not to play. Just to kind of give you an idea, we had about 65 people try out last year. And then this year we had about 34. So we that was a little bit of a different tryout than it was last year. I think we had a lot more choices to be made last year. So I guess it simplifies things, but it's also kind of indicative of whether there are people kind of hiding in there must be some freshmen out there that might come out next year, because it's more of a steady season. So, but our JV team looks great. We've got a lot of really good athletes on that team. Scott's been doing a good job with them. And then we have a few girls on the 9-10 team, not the freshman team, but it's a 9-10 team. Also somewhat having to do with Corona. And Maddie Link's at that level, and they're doing really good too. There's a few athletes I'm sure we'll start to see more of. So,
well, hopefully you'll get that 65 or 60 or the big number again in recruitment, and bringing some of the girls back in for next season. Obviously, with COVID-19 going on, a lot of parents and a lot of players still kind of taking a step back, going, well, is this season really worth it? Maybe I've got 1 more year or 2 more years to make my staple. But at the same time, that does offer up a lot of opportunity for underclassmen to come up and play at the varsity level. But as you mentioned, the team did have to deal with COVID-19, a big sort of shakeup to the season, more of a slight pause than a cancellation, which is great because now your team gets an opportunity to get back out on the floor and play some games. When that news broke, what was your initial thoughts of the season going forward?
So it was definitely rough. I don't know if how much information I'm supposed to share here.
I would just share whatever you're comfortable with. It's perfectly fine.
Okay. So I'm actually the one that tested positive.
Oh.
And so it was a little bit of a bummer because for the whole day leading up to Flagstaff, because that's the big rival game, right? We're super excited, been planning, doing all this stuff for Flag. And leading up to that, my husband and I probably spent about an hour in the front yard trying to decide, do I go get tested, do I not? Because I wasn't really feeling any symptoms, but he had come back positive.
Okay.
And so it was one of those ethical dilemmas of whether we should do it or not. And we've been taking all the precautions, wearing masks, staying 6 feet away, sanitizing, we've been doing all of that. So I had figured that they would just continue without me, since I had been keeping my distance, but that's not the case. So it was definitely a rough night. But the girls have been incredible. It's one of those things that you're like, I'm so sorry that I did this, but it's like, it's not your fault. It just happened to everybody, So, right. But as you can see, I'm totally fine. We're fine. Like, the symptoms were really, really light. Like, it wasn't bad at all, which is good. It's a blessing that we didn't have to deal with more than that. So I think it's been a little bit rough because I know there's just been a few coaches that have been getting it, and it's rough when it's you, because you're like, oh, I wouldn't have even expected it. I figured it'd be one of the girls, but so I don't know. I just didn't even think that it would have. I mean, it's not like I walk on water or anything.
No, but you're also not on a campus. You're not really involving yourself with a whole lot of people. Like you said, you don't think you're going to get it, and then you get it. It just happens. Yeah.
So that's been a little bit of a bummer, but the girls have responded really well. They've been super supportive and understanding, which is nice. There's not much that we can do about it. We're shut down for 2 weeks. So coming back this week, and then like you said, we have an insane schedule. We've got 3 to 4 games per week. That means we have like 2 more practices for the rest of the season and yeah, so we'll see. It'll be interesting. Honestly, I don't care. I'm like, just let them play, just let them have their games. So we're just super excited to get back on the court. Of course, we come back to play a game. We don't even get a practice before. So
No, it is very much a get up and go schedule going forward for the Coconino Panthers. You have a block of a block of games throughout the entire week, including traveling twice to Lee Williams, which, you're a little closer than we are when we got to go up to Kingman, but still a 2-hour drive is quite a lot to do in the matter of 2 days. So best of luck. But again, we're very happy, Coach, that you're doing well. Hopefully your husband is doing well as well. The 4A Grand Canyon region is no fun without Coconino High School in it, and we're happy that the Panthers are able to get back and play some more volleyball and finish out the rest of their season. How have you been preparing? Are you doing more virtual? You mentioned you had a virtual workout not too long ago. How are you keeping your team focused and sharp? And one last question as well. Do you feel like maybe this is possibly an advantage where your team gets a little more practice time, or maybe even a little time on their own to sort of, work out some of those mistakes or work on some of those finer details?
So I would say that this whole shutdown has been really, really tough on everybody. Obviously, I'm involved with high schoolers, so that's where my passion is going to land. But these girls, and not just the girls, but every athlete at Coconino and Flag High, I'm sure, has just been struggling with the mental state of, I'm shut down, I'm at home all day long by myself, trying to stay motivated, trying to stay positive. We've just been having a lot of conversations about how when we get back on the court, it's got to be everything that you have. You've just got to be passionate about every single point, that you can't control what God has dealt you, but, we can make the most of what he has given us, which is at least the last 3 weeks of a season. So definitely not what we had planned, but these girls are incredible, and they've been staying positive. Of course, I'm sure I heard about, the first night is rough and there was tears and, right. Everyone's bummed, especially the seniors. It's not the year that they had planned for, which is a bummer. But then at the same time, you can't just say, oh, poor seniors, because at every age level, they're getting a season kind of, taken, some parts of the season taken from them. So really everyone's being affected by it. So we took a few days probably of just like, we're all going to just check out for a little bit. We just text each other and make sure everyone's good on the group message. And then this week we've been just doing virtual workouts just to try to get back in it, because we're ready to go on Tuesday. And so we're just trying to kind of get ourselves back in shape. They can grab a ball and do some work on the wall, like you're saying, work on some details and that kind of thing. So just trying to keep them motivated and have them actually motivating each other to continue to get some touches on the ball. So that's kind of where we've been. And then we've just been watching video and making comments and sending pictures and just stuff like that. What do we need to work on and what do they need to see in a team and that kind of thing. So trying to stay volleyball minded.
Yeah, no, well, it sounds like the Panthers are back at full charge and they're ready to get back out on the floor, Coach. I know you are as well. And again, we're happy to hear that you and your husband are doing well after recovering from COVID-19. And we're excited to see what the Panthers have in store for the rest of the 4A Grand Canyon region as they move forward. This isn't the first time that you've had to put together a little bit of a turnaround in your first season. The team started 3-8, I believe, and then you guys won your last 5 of 6, finished out the season 8-9. And well, now under different circumstances, you're tasked once again of turning the season around. But Coach, I want to thank you very much for coming on, and I appreciate you taking the time. We'll have to talk to you again later in the season and see how you're doing after that rush of games at the end of the season.
No problem. Thank you.
Again, the Coconino High School girls volleyball coach at the varsity level, Coach Serena Wallace. Coach, again, thank you very much for coming on. We're going to take a quick break. Off the bench, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting, Jackson Hewitt, and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am now joined by the Mingus Union High School swim coach, Coach Gretchen Wesbrock. Coach, welcome onto the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you. And funny enough, one of our sponsors happens to be the home pool for the Marauders at the Cottonwood Recreation Center, which is a nice little cross promotion that we didn't plan on, but it happened to work out that way. How's the season been going so far, Coach?
It's been wonderful. We're actually towards the end of our season right now, and it's looked different in some ways, but I would say the athletes have responded so well. They're just, every year I probably say the same thing, but they're just such a good group of humans, a good group of young people, very hardworking. So we're thankful we have pool time. So, I mean, huge shout out to the city of Cottonwood and Parks and Recs, because there are other teams across the state that have not had the same opportunity. So I just focus whenever the students or whenever the athletes are maybe reminiscing or missing something from a previous season, we just try to always shift it to what we are doing and how positive it is. And they've been super responsive.
And that's great to keep it nice and positive. As we know, COVID-19 has been a very, very strange mix into this season. I've talked to numerous coaches about how COVID-19 has affected them. And yes, we are at kind of a benefit here in Yavapai County, having our numbers down quite low early on in the season. So a lot of our other teams outside of just Mingus here in the 4A Grand Canyon region getting a little bit more practice time than others. But who's been really standing out so far this year as we talk a little more about the athletes?
You bet. I feel like I have a lot of standouts. I've got 5 seniors this year, and then a huge group of juniors. In my senior group, I've got great captains: Sterling Sorensen, Tiana Ladico, Charlie Green. I've got another senior, Jared Gordon, who's really he broke the minute for the first time a few weeks ago, and then the next meet he did a 55. So he's just, something has clicked for that guy. In my junior group, Brooke Peterson, Jade Bach, Landon Treesize, Madison Hartman, Bailey Hartman, Eliana Cricks, like I've got a lot, and then a lot of up and coming sophomores that last year it was their first year swimming in like a structured swim program. And
Right.
so they were doing a lot of learning. And I'll tell you what, there's a couple of those students, Jackson Moore, Hunter Kogel, Ethan Kogel, they're going to be coming in to a qualifier this year when they really just learned a lot of stuff just last year. And I've got some real standout freshmen, Ryan Ritter, Emily Martin, Beth Kessel-Bates, and Nicholas Knowles. So it's good. Like, it's good this year. And then the future is very bright for Mingus Swim.
Yeah, of course. As we know, you also coach the Clippers program, which is sort of it's like a mix of club / youth swim program. And I know probably a lot of your current swimmers at the high school went through that program. And as you mentioned, you've got a lot of experience on the squad this year. I would assume you've probably got a few kids who are looking at swimming at the next level, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think within my senior group, I would say most of them have their sights set on other things. But in my junior group, I definitely have swimmers who are interested in going on to the next level. And, we've got 2 swimmers right now from the program that I got to coach that are swimming in college. And so it's exciting because the team, they know that it's possible. So that's really phenomenal. And yeah, the Clippers, it's such an amazing program and it's been really fun. This is my 7th season with Mingus. And so some of these freshmen I coached when they were little and now to get to have them as freshmen it comes full circle. It's very, very special.
Yeah, and it's got to be great. Like I mentioned, you coach the Clippers program. So essentially they're going from their youth coach to their high school coach. So it must help with the transition quite a lot. As you mentioned, you have a few athletes who are focusing on other things. I'm kind of curious with swim, as you see it a lot with football, where you have guys who play football and then they do wrestling, or you have baseball players who also play basketball. Do you get a lot of dual sport athletes in swim?
I would say I do, more so here. I grew up in the Valley, and you didn't see a lot of multi-sport athletes with swimmers because if you were going to be college bound, you were swimming year round. And typically that meant 2 practices a day. And so whereas, it's one of the things I think is really special about this community and this school is I see a lot of students we've got some that do wrestling and then go on to track. I would say that's a pretty common thing is to do track in the spring, which is good. Both sports help each other for sure. But yeah, I do have quite a few multi-sport athletes. And then there's a handful, that Jack Zahudanis, I didn't mention him, awesome junior this year. He's just like exploded and he's thinking maybe I want to swim year round. And to be able to train year round. And that for a lot of swimmers, that's what it's going to take to be able to see the type of time drops that they need to be able to compete at the next level.
And again, we were speaking with Mingus Union High School swim coach Gretchen Wesbrock. Coach, as we all know, as I mentioned at the top of the show, and it's going to be prominent at least for the remainder of this year, which is COVID-19. The swim season also had to take a little bit of a hit with COVID-19. But something quite interesting came out of the swim season, which are virtual swim meets. Right. So, Coach, what does a COVID-19 swim season look like? And also, how have the virtual swim meets been going?
Yeah, so we just finished our last virtual swim meet on Thursday, and we've had 4 this season. So in a normal season, we would have 7 competitions, and then the swimmers would have a chance to compete at 4 qualifiers. This year, they cut our season down a bit, so we have 4 meets. And depending on the team, some teams, their pools were cleared. I should say pretty few were cleared to be able to host. We made the decision early on that we did not want to do that. And because we wanted to make it the full season as healthy as possible. So when we're hosting a virtual meet, typically that team is competing at a similar time at their home pool. We're competing. And then whoever the host is getting results and calculating those results. And then it's not as exciting because at the end of the meet, we don't have results yet. They have to wait till the next day to get those. But in the beginning, going into our first meet, I remember thinking, is this going to feel weird? Is this just going to feel kind of like a practice, like time trials? And it really hasn't. We've been really fortunate. We've been able to have every swimmer gets a guest. And, with a roster, we started off with a roster of like 45. We've kept a pretty solid 40. And so, 40 people in the stands plus, the full team, it still feels exciting. They're still cheering. It still has that feel, which is fun. And then it's been good too for the swimmers because they really have to focus on pushing each other. I haven't seen that in the same way before, where you've got to help your like you got to go fast because you got to get your teammate to keep up with you and go, and then for them to race the clock as well, which is really what swimming's all about. It's lovely to have somebody next to you that can push you, but you've got to know what fast feels like. And so they're learning what that is, and I'm seeing that translated into daily practice, which that has changed this year. Because our squad is so big, we had to break them up into 2 groups. And so we have a gray group and a red group, and they only have an hour in the pool, whereas before they had 2 hours. And in a lot of ways, I've really enjoyed it almost more because I feel like the athletes are more focused. Okay. I tease especially my returners. I'm like, you could take 30 minutes to stretch and get your cap and goggles on. And now this year it's like when it's time to go, they're ready. And I just feel like their effort has been so high. And that's been different than any other year. Not that they haven't a good effort, but they're maximizing their time.
Yeah, no, and it's so strange because obviously you can't play football virtually. I mean, I guess we could play Madden, but we're not going to really see Mingus football and Prescott football take on each other in Madden 21. But yeah, it might be kind of nice where in a lot of ways, Coach, where most, if we had gone to that sort of nuclear option where we didn't really have a whole lot of our sports, swim easily could have continued to have their season.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's things that are different where they're masking up when they're coming in the pool and masking up when they're getting out. But it's just the way we're operating. And so, yeah, it is one of those sports that fortunately has been able to continue. And the athletes have been really respectful of each other and respectful of what's going on. And that's enabled us to have a fairly normal, if that season.
Yeah, you very much have to put quotation marks around normal when you're talking about COVID-19 and the year 2020. Right. Obviously, you did not have an off season this year. Did you see any drops in speed or technique with your players? And what was the focus in the off season?
Well, so we were able to get about 3 weeks in June when Mingus did have a little bit of preseason open, and then we put the close to that. So we got a few weeks in the pool. I would say, and I keep telling the athletes this too, everybody's really in the same situation. So I've seen time drops. I've seen athletes still excel. Some of my returners who really benefit from just more time in the water, they're still getting close to where they were. And again, some of them have dropped time. So preseason's huge, obviously, for every sport, and swim is no exception. I think just the fact that they were out of doing a lot of stuff since March, those first few weeks, there were some creaky bones and sore muscles, but yeah, I keep telling them because they're like, what's it going to look like? Because state will look different this year, and we can talk about that whenever you want. But
yeah, of course.
I keep telling them we just don't know. We don't know what other people are doing. The only times we've seen are the teams we've competed against. Otherwise, there's no spot for us to look. So we just got to do the best we can.
How have you been able to strike that balance in practice? You see some of your players, like you said, you saw some drops in speed. I know that for swim, it is a time-based. It's not more like cross country where you do want to finish early, but you also want to be able to go the length of time. So how have you been able to find that balance between technique and keeping your players at the top speed that they've competed the year before?
Yeah, I just, for me, I've had to cut out some stuff, obviously, with my practices. And I just tell them, like, we got to get working fast, So whereas before I might have more time to be able to do drills or more time to be able to do some of that technique stuff, it's like, I'll do technique, but it's going to be while you're swimming a set. And so as far as yardage, they're still getting great yardage for just an hour in the pool. And in a lot of ways, we haven't had to cut a lot because they're maximizing their time.
Great. Fantastic. As you mentioned, there is a 2-day qualifier coming up next weekend. It'll be a 2-day event on Friday and Saturday, which you can watch right here on Verde Valley TV, which has got to be exciting for you, Coach, to get an opportunity to get the players back out on the television. I know you mentioned with the virtual swim meets, you kind of technically have been able to watch them on the Facebook page, but now you get that big spotlight with with Verde Valley TV. How are you feeling going into the qualifier? And you mentioned the state changes. Let's get into that right after.
You bet. So I'm excited. Mingus was not planning to host a qualifier this year, but we got word from the AIA that there was no host in Northern Arizona. And so after kind of sitting with it a bit, I thought we just got to do it. We have the ability. The city was supportive, which is just incredible. And so we have, at this point, 5 other teams coming to join us next week. We'll be having the boys swim on Friday afternoon, and then the girls will swim on Saturday morning. And then from there, all those times get collected from all those meets. Some of them started on the 23rd and will run through the 31st. That's the last day for qualifiers in the state. And they will look at times and they will figure out the top 24 for the state in individual events, top 16 for relays. And who will be traveling down. We're going to Phoenix Country Day on November 7th. And I have high hopes for our group. That they will do quite well. So it's great. I'm super excited for them to get to be on TV and you know, for everybody to get to watch them. And they're a hard working group of athletes, and swim is not a high glory sport necessarily, but it is a difficult sport. It is a difficult sport.
And of course, Brian James will be on the call for that one. Again, you can check out the 2-day qualifier for the swim team for Mingus Union on October 30th and 31st. So we got a packed day that day. We've got swim in the morning, then we've got football, and then the next day we've got swim, and then we've got volleyball. So it should be a lot of fun. A very, very Mingus heavy day at the end of this month. Should be a lot of fun. So you must be feeling pretty confident about your team going into this qualifier. And we're excited to see what happens. Again, we are speaking with Mingus Union High School swim coach Gretchen Wesbrock. Coach, I just got one more question for you, and it very much is, how many swimmers do you think are going to qualify for state this year? I know the short answer is probably all of them.
I know. Well, I want to say it'd be really awesome to be able to take, all 3 of the relays, which would end up being 12 boys, 12 girls. And then, in the individual, some of our returning athletes qualified last year. So I have no doubt that they have the potential to do the same thing this year. So if I could get 24 athletes there, but I tell them I'm happy with anything. So we'll see what happens.
Well, Coach, we're all excited to see what happens exactly. I want to thank you very much for taking the time, and best of luck next week.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Of course, again, check out the Mingus Union Swim Team on October 30th and 31st here on Verde Valley TV. You can catch both days right here on Verde Valley TV. Coach Wesbrock, thanks again for coming on. We're going to take a quick break. Off the Bench, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome you back here to Off the Bench Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm Philip Catafamo. Want to welcome you back here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. Want to thank my guests for coming on to the program today. Quarterback and wide receiver coach Erick Quesada of Mingus Union High School. We'll touch base with him when baseball season rolls around. Want to thank Coconino girls varsity volleyball coach Serena Wallace for coming on. Happy to hear that her and her husband are recovering well. I know the Panthers are excited to get back out on the floor and play some more volleyball for the rest of their season after their brief pause. And of course, Mingus Union's swim coach Gretchen Wesbrock. Always great to talk with Coach Wesbrock. She's just such a lovely lady to talk to. Got a great personality and a great program there at Mingus Union. We're taking a look at the week ahead here. Some football for you on Friday. Bradshaw will take on Coconino at Coconino. Mingus Union will travel to Kingman to take on the Lee Williams Volunteers. Mojave will travel to Prescott to take on the Badgers at Prescott Prescott High School. There's also some football on Saturday. Cactus High School will travel to Flagstaff to take on the Eagles. As we know, Flagstaff and Coconino are sharing a stadium right now, as Flagstaff does not have a field to play at. And there is some volleyball for you on Saturday as well. Lee Williams will take on the Mingus Marauders on Halloween. Should be a lot of fun. You can catch that game on Verde Valley TV. For my guests, I want to thank them all for coming on. I'm Philip Catalfamo, letting you know that we'll have some more sports for you next week, and we'll hope you join us right here on KVNA 104.7 FM and Verde Valley TV. We'll see you next week with some more sports.